Alister Lee, thank you so much for coming out. I've heard a lot about you from Paul, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, especially with the industry that you're in and some of the things that me and you talked about earlier that you've been through that I think would be great to pass on to other people. So I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah.
So before we begin, Alister, can you tell me and the audience a little bit about who you are, where you came from, where you're working at now, and then we'll go off from there.
Sure, sounds good.
All right.
Hey everybody, I'm Alister. I'm originally from Canada, Vancouver. It's like a long story, but I actually also grew up in Hong Kong. We can go into that later if we want.
Probably will.
We will.
That's a good story right there.
But I'm currently working at EA on the Sims 4 team. Yeah, I'm an experience designer, which basically just means UI, UX, like user interface and user experience design. It sounds very nerdy, I know, but in a box, all it means, it's like, I'm sure you play video games, all the buttons, all the panels that pop up, that's what a UI designer would do.
Gotcha.
And a UX designer would be usually the ones that design the flows of like, how do you take a player from point A to point B? So it's like the experience.
The
If that makes
experience.
sense.
In a way it does. We'll elaborate on that, because it's just, how has that changed since we played video games when we played Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, whatever.
Yeah.
But what is that experience like working at that company? And what's the industry like just making games all day? Because I think a lot of people would think, if I could get paid to play and develop video games, that's like a slam dunk. Why would I not want to do that? But what's the daily routine like working at a place like that, and just what you do every day?
Yeah, it obviously would depend on what you want to be doing. I'm UI UX designer. There are like developers who do study. Now there are a lot of programs that actually train you to be a game designer, more like game engine developing. Back in my day, I start off doing graphic design. In college I started off doing computer science because I felt like my family wanted me to either be, engineer, doctor, one of those things. Typical Asian expectations, I guess.
I wasn't going to say it, but we'll go with that. Okay.
Yeah.
So go on.
So with that, halfway through my college experience, I changed to graphic design because I remember there was a specific one day where I was sitting with one of my really good friends in the computer labs at 4 a.m. at like a parallel systems program and being like, this is not for me. I need to do something creative. And even before college, I knew I was a very creative person. I love designing things. Do you remember like GeoCities and Angel Fire? Do you remember those?
GeoCities sounds familiar. Remind me what that is
It's
again.
like a Yahoo domain.
Oh, that's
Can you
right.
remember? I think
That's
it's Yahoo.
right.
I think it was, yeah. But I used to create websites for fun and create websites for people. I was part of this, like totally dating myself, but like there's like this Asian community website called Asian Avenue.
News to me.
where you could create profiles for yourself. And I started designing for people like that. And it's just crazy how I now do it as my career. But with that, it comes from I think I started off, not knowing that games could be a potential career, because when I was young, my mom would always be like, no, stop wasting time playing video games, right? I remember just when I was a kid, I used to play my little Game Boy at night, just trying to play Pokemon. Oh, I'm wearing a Pokemon shirt. With that and feeling like I could possibly get into this, but never knew it was a possibility because I never met anyone that would do design and in video games. So it was a lot of trial and error after I graduated. Through connections, it was just when I just cold reached out to people on LinkedIn and be like, hey, you seem like a cool person. Can I know what you do? And then just through there managed to get my first job in the video game industry.
Wow, you just cold called pretty much people saying, "Hey, I see you work at this company. You work in this part of video games. Can you hook me up?" Sort of. That's pretty amazing just to be able to do that and somebody to respond to you and say, "Let me give you some information."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what was your first job in the industry? What did you do?
It was mobile games. It was with a Japanese company. My first ever job. Now I tell people I swear I will never do casino games anymore because my first job was making slot machines. It was like a weird project because you realize you're in a way creating something to have people feed their addiction in a way with virtual currency. It was fun. It was like a fun way to like get your foot in the door with that and creating virtual slot machines and creating all the animations for that. But it's like a fun project. I still have it in my portfolio as just like something to remember, like to remind myself that I did this.
Wow. How many years ago was that one, the slot machine?
Oh my gosh. Probably, what was it, like probably more than like 5 years ago, like 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
2013, I think.
That's not too long ago.
Not too long ago, yeah.
But even back then, you were thinking, this is a pretty cool career. I get to make a slot machine game. Were you really balancing that whole idea that you just talked about a minute ago about I'm making something that I think is interesting, but it's also designed to feed an addiction?
Yeah.
How did you balance that? Was it just, it's a job, I get paid, and that's it?
I think when I was younger, it's definitely, it's like I need to get my foot in the door. My own values don't matter at this moment. And I think when I was younger, I don't think I was emotionally mature enough to really understand, like, this is my first job. I'm excited. But thankfully, like, my project wasn't just doing casino work. It was, like, other games as well. So there was definitely a point where I probably was a reflection after I got laid off from from that company, which happens a lot in the gaming industry.
I believe it.
That like holy crap, like that's not something I want to do ever again.
Really?
Yeah.
So how did the transition happen to EA? How did that happen?
It was in between like a few companies, also in games, and then it actually is related to my past relationship. But I actually left the Bay Area for a few months I just was like, I'm done. You know, my 10-year relationship was over. We can get into that later. I left, I went back home, and I was like determined to find a job in Canada. But no one would want to hire me. I kept getting recruiters being like, oh, you're from the Bay. We can't afford you for what you're looking for. But at that time, I'm like, I'm willing to take anything. Like, I was desperate. I just wanted a quick change in my life. And it was my mom at that time. It was like, I think it was like almost 6 months. I didn't have work. I was just living at home with my mom. And she was like, I think maybe it's like your time in the Bay is not done yet. You know, maybe you should just apply to jobs back in the Bay. And I was like, you know, just being whiny and be like, no, I don't want to go back, you know. And then she'll just like, fine, I'll just apply. Just like, not even like reach out to anyone. I just like, all right, this position seems cool. I'm just going to apply for it. And then immediately the next day, I got a recruiter reach out to me, and then got the job. And then I came back to the Bay. Yeah.
That was fast.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where like I felt like I believe like the timing was probably, I left the Bay too early. It's something I needed to complete here. And this San Francisco is like what I call my home. It's like my adult home in a way. I like, even when I go home now, when people ask me, oh, you're from Vancouver, like, what do you do now? I was like, I have no idea. Like, as a kid, I used to hang out at the mall and, you know, go to the GameStop or whatever.
I remember those days remember when there was arcades in the mall?
Yes.
You know, you would just go, you'd have a pocket full of quarters, you'd go down to the food court and you go to the arcade. And for me, it was Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, the Dance Dance Revolution crowd. That was a whole nother.
Yeah.
That was a whole nother. I mean, the things that they were doing with the fixtures there, and whole nother industry. That was kind of the first experience I had with just how deep this video game culture was back then. And this is in the late 90s when we just assumed it was a couple people playing video games for fun, then we go about the rest of our day. And then as time has gone on, it's just morphed into this whole new industry where people are getting paid millions of dollars to play video games all day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's mind-blowing now that is where a lot of the money is going. And, I'm sure you've seen it from your industry now. So you work on, was it the Sims project?
Sims, yeah.
So what's it like developing that game from your aspect? And what is it that, I guess, what are the goals of it? Is it just to keep people, building their whole life together in this simulation model? It's like, what is like the whole point of it in a way? That sounds weird, but yeah, where is it going with that?
I think it's like more of the Sims franchise, right? Like, I don't know if you played like Sim City. There's like, was it Sim Ant? That was like one of the craziest. It's like super old. You play an ant simulation.
I remember the Sims back when they used to have the computer games, the big box you'd find like at Toys R Us was this big for a floppy disk, and your whole goal was to build a house or a community, and then this is your daily life. You go to work. I never could get into that. It just was on a different level. But how's it evolved now? Has it just gone to the nth degree?
Same, if you think about it. Like we're at the 4th version now, Sims 4, and the basic of the Sims, you're still doing the same thing. It's more about a sandbox where you allow the players to create their own characters, their own house, their own story, really. And we've won like a lot of, or more recognition about like being very inclusive, or that's like what we're trying to do always, to allow any person to tell their own story. Like one of the best stories I've heard is, we get a lot of fan mail, I guess that's what you call it. They're more like tweets, I guess now.
Yeah.
They're more tweets now. But one of the players were saying that I think it was because of the pandemic, they couldn't go home for one of their grandparents' funerals or something, and they made the funeral in the game to help her deal with her emotions, and was just very thankful that we created this sandbox for them. And we get a lot of stories like that where they don't get to live their real life, I guess, how they want to be, and they use the game to really show their true colors, their real story that way. And that's like, I feel like why Sims has been so popular. It's just there's like a very honest way to tell stories that way.
Wow, so people can actually, like, it's evolved from just I'm making a fantasy world and that's pretty much it, to this is how I'm actually processing real life emotions and real life situations. That's crazy to believe.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it's good that you had a tool out there for this person to actually be able to express themselves and process their emotions. But on the other hand, it's like, wow, that, this is becoming something that people can rely on now to get through things. How does that go? I mean, is that ever talked about over there? Is that something that's brought up, or is just we're making the video game and what people do with it, that's what they do with it? Or is it like, hey, we have a lot of say in how people function in their lives now for real? Like, do those conversations ever come up over there within your team, within the company?
Yeah, they happen pretty much every meeting. Like, part of what I do, user experience, is we're basically the expert for the players. So we do a lot of research actually with what our players want. And even now when we do develop new features, we have a lot of user testing where we get existing players for The Sims, and they play our features and they give us feedback, and we do take that into account. There's no oh, we're the developers and we're always right. It's always a conversation, which is great. And it's also, I think, because the Sims 4 game, I think we have like over 300 million players or something like that.
Wow, 300 million people playing one game.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about that, right? Because any little thing, obviously you're going to get the haters.
Always, right? Everywhere, they're out there.
Right. Yeah, the comment section is terrifying.
Yeah, stop paying attention to the comments section. Anyway, go on.
No, no. Yeah. But yeah, it's like always a conversation about the player. And it's hard to always speak for the player, right? And a lot of our player base could tend to be a lot younger than a lot of the dev team, right? So it's like, like how do you not be like the stereotypical, like everyone I feel like feels like, oh, there's just a room full of like white guys in a meeting room dictating what needs to be in the game, right? But that's not at all what happens. It's like our team is very diverse. We always talk about our players. We think about our players. We have now, in a way, like what I'm doing right now is more of the quality of life, live service part of the game, where I am more tasked to think about how do we improve the game, in the sense of how do we be more inclusive, for example, like how do we take away or at least develop more features that allow players to express themselves. So it's like a lot of it sounds very like fundamental, right? Like,
I mean, I think you're hitting on a good point, because this is the same conversation that's been kind of in the news lately with all these other social media outlets, in that the company you work for is a business. They have to make money. That's kind of the point of having a business. If I'm not profitable, what am I doing? So you're asking your clients or the people who play the video games, what is it that you want? And if we get enough information, we're going to adjust the game to what you want. Like, the whole point is, if they enjoy the game that much and you keep giving them what they want, they're going to keep spending more time in it. The more time they spend in it, the more they're going to buy another game like that, and so forth and so forth. So the company makes money. And we've been hearing a lot in the news lately about like all these other tech companies, Facebook and YouTube, for example, where the whole point of their algorithm is to get people to continue to engage with the product. Now, if you're somebody that searches for a certain thing, then they're going to keep giving you that certain thing. The idea being you're going to keep watching, and what they care about more is the time that you're spending on the platform. So in a way, because they're giving you what you want, if what you want leads to other consequences, then there's a bigger societal problem here that, there's a conversation to be had with whether or not it's those companies' fault to have to actually, monitor that, or if they're saying we're just giving you what you want and we need to make money from our advertisers, so we're going to do what we got to do from the business point of view. But from your side of it, how's the general feeling with developing a game like this? Like, do people talk about, hey, there's some danger here with, what we're giving to our customers, and maybe we should pull back a little bit, but then, we get pushed back that if that's what they want, you got to keep giving it to them. Like, has there ever been an example where somebody or enough, I guess, customers wanted a certain thing out of the game, and it was like, maybe we shouldn't go down that route because it may not be the right thing? Any of those conversations ever come across there?
Yes.
Very straightforward answer.
That's what I'll say. I can't obviously speak for EA, but
right.
Or the Sims 4 team, but we actually recently, that was pretty publicly, I think it was past, or I think it was this year, where the community of Sims 4, they were like, oh, we need to have pronouns in our game, because currently right now our game's system is very binary. It's either you are a male or a female, and this is more of a tech reason background, but the players basically came together and had a petition about we need to have pronouns in our game, and it was like picked up by news articles, and obviously there was like a concern of like tech point of view, where just like, because our game is, I think, 6 years old now, I believe, that it's like, okay, how do we consider this feature, this is what our players want, and this, but we also want to give it to them, but it's like we have to, we can't just decide, let's just do it the next day, right? There's a lot of like production other things are in production all the time, so it's like, how do we prioritize these features, right? So like, these are always the conversations we're having, and I think one thing we're doing really great about is now we're being very upfront with our players, and we have these Twitch streams where our developers come on Twitch and players get to ask them questions and being like, hey, we're actually working on these things that you really want. And obviously you get a bunch of people who are very excited, and then the other people that are like, that's not enough, you need to do more. And it's always the battle there. But I think what we're trying to do on the dev team is like, we're really trying, right? Like, we're actually doing the steps too, but we can't obviously tell you all the details, but like,
obviously, yes,
we're like being really upfront and honest, like, this is what we're trying to do. So that's been, I think, great for our player base too. I think that's why people keep coming back to play The Sims. And yeah,
I mean, it makes sense because, well, it makes sense for today's world. I mean, we talked about back in the day when we were kids, and it was Super Nintendo, it was Sega Genesis. If you had a video game that you played longer than 40 hours, that was amazing, like a Final Fantasy game or something, because you only had that cartridge or CD, and once you beat everything, that was it. It was done. You put it on the shelf, you let your friends borrow, whatever. Now that one video game, because it's all online now, there's just so many different avenues that you can take with all these different games now, which is great from the technology side of it, that you can create something and branch it out to that. And from the business point of view of how much opportunity you have to do, whether it's selling coins to buy costumes or whatnot. That's
exactly.
The business model is just so infinite at that point.
Yeah.
So that's been great for a lot of companies, which is why that they've thrived. The big, well, not I won't say the bigger issue, but something of concern can be if a lot of people are spending so much time playing video games, no matter if it's for money or whatnot, are we losing something else? And I've seen a lot with the newer generation that it can be harder to talk to some kids nowadays. Like, if you're not talking to them on a screen, it's, how do you handle yourself? I've seen this a lot in Japan when I went there last before the pandemic. And
oh, no way. Where did you go in Japan?
We went to Tokyo, Osaka,
Nice.
and Kyoto, which was an exciting time, for my first time there, and be able to spend 2 weeks in the country and get immersed in the culture. And I'd studied Japanese for a long time, but I can never use it here because not a lot of people speak it. So it kind of just fell in the back of my mind. But when we went over there, it started to come back because you get immersed in it. You start reading the language. Like, okay, that's what that means. I'm piecing it together now. It's pretty awesome.
Did they reply to you in Japanese?
Yes.
Oh, no way.
Most of the time that they did.
Great.
And they could tell I was trying to, work through it. So very pleasant people, and
That's great.
recommend anybody who hasn't gone to go there. But I would notice the night culture and just how you can sort of see the little innuendos of people kind of would huddle around this video game culture. Mm-hmm. Like the idea that you could rent carts and drive around the, I think, Akihabara neighborhood in Mario Kart.
Did
and
you do that?
No, I didn't do that. I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know if that's, maybe I'm too old for that. But just the idea that you could actually do it was exciting. Like, it was exciting at the same time. How old are we getting? Are we supposed to move past this? That we're
never
walking down the street at midnight and there's all these arcades here, and like, oh man, it was a different experience that I'd never seen over here. But behind the scenes, you can kind of tell how there's that question mark of, if our young generation is spending so much time in video games, they're not starting families, they're not having those long careers, or the careers they have are in the industry. And you're starting to see a bigger picture of, they talk about the aging Japanese population, and the younger generation just isn't excited to start families. Part of it is the economics of it, which is how expensive everything is over there, like over here. And the other part of it is, well, if I have everything I need in my computer and my TV and everything else they have over there, why bother getting in a relationship? Why bother starting a family? Why bother doing what my parents' generation did? Because I saw what happened to them. Maybe the husband worked night and day and the mother was at home all day, and they're like, I don't want that. But at the same time, if there's no children coming about, what does that do for the society? So I know that's a challenge that they have to work on, but I'm starting to see it happen over here, for better or for worse. And, there is a part to play that I think social media and the video game industry has and all that. But it's a balancing act, because your company, you're supposed to make money. That's how you survive. That's how you get paid. That's how you can go do your thing. And then where do we draw the line at? But it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see that you guys are having that conversation over there. Is where is that line at? How do we balance it? We have a job to do, but at the same time, do we want to just go full on into what the players want? Because they could ask for the world, and if we keep saying yes, 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 at some point it's going to be like, well, we can't do anything else. We can't make it perfect. So it was interesting that you brought that part up there. So if someone was interested in being in the industry of making video games, it sounds like it would be an awesome career. You get paid to do something that a lot of us just did for fun when we were kids, and now you can get paid for it. But what's like the daily life like when you show up? Is it you work from home remotely? Is it a 9 to 5? Is it a team environment? Is it, how's that work?
I think it's pretty similar to any tech company right now in the Bay, where, I mean, we are working remotely now. The EA HQ office is, I think we have, I don't remember what number it is, but we currently cannot have people work in the office.
The Redwood City one?
The Redwood City one, yeah, correct. I mean, based on your personal circumstance there, but
Right.
yeah, like what I do day to day, it's obviously different depending on what you do. But I'm in meetings all day because part of, as an experienced designer, you are meeting with other stakeholders. Like I'm meeting with producers, engineers, like game designers, anyone really, just to talk about like a feature that we're developing. You know, how do we improve process? There's like a lot of that day to day, and we do a lot of also research, like I mentioned, where we have to sit down and play. We do a lot of competitor analysis, obviously, by playing
Yeah.
other games as well. But from there, we just, a lot of it is actually based around data, and it's not just someone being like, this is what I think, and this is what we should do, right? A lot of it is like, okay, it's more of like a higher level thing of like, we want to be creating this idea. How do we get there?
So the perception of maybe you go into work, the office, and you sit in front of a computer playing video games all day trying to beat the game isn't exactly accurate. Okay.
No. I mean, that would be awesome, right? I mean, that's also what I feel like my mom thinks I do. So.
I mean, can't blame her. That's what I would think a lot of video game developers do. I mean, I work near the PlayStation headquarters.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, every now and then I walk into the main building. It's been a while. You just walk in the main area and you see all the old PlayStations from, you know, the first one to the new current one now, and the video game, the screens there being played. And you can see the developers upstairs, like, you know, like this with the remote control. And it's like, man, that must be fun. At the same time, I'd probably go nuts after about a couple hours because I can't sit there and play those games anymore like I did when I was a kid. I just don't have the time. I don't have the patience, which I think is good because if I got into it again, that might just destroy my life now because that's all it would be consumed about.
It's funny that you bring that up because I feel like a lot of, kind of similar to what you were talking about earlier of, I feel like there's like this, I don't want to say stereotype or misconception of how video games is a waste of time, right? I feel like my mom told me that when I was younger, like it's a waste of time, and I don't think you can ever age out of video games, right? Because I feel like video games is in the same category as any other hobby, right? Like it's just because you sitting there and you're zoning out for, right? I feel like people do this with, you know, doom scrolling on TikTok or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like those are things that happen now, and I mean, especially now because of the pandemic, video games have become such a huge thing now. People are starting to buy like the Switch now to play with their families because, you know, they're home a lot. There's nothing to do. I don't know, and it just becomes an outlet for them, right? I think that's the difference there when something becomes you just need an escape, right? There's like a lot of people do different things that way, and video games just happen to be one of them. But I always feel like every time I bring up video games, there's always this weird feeling that I get of they're like, oh, maybe it's just my mom in my head again, being like, oh, you're wasting time. Oh, that's not real. Oh, you're really nerdy, right? Like those are the things that I always get. And for me, it's like my life, and I don't feel any negative things to it. It's like I still make video games. I play video games, and even not just video games, I play a lot of board games as well. Like games, I don't think should ever be a bad thing, right? Like,
see, I think it's great you put it that way, as in if you see video games like a hobby, I go to my job, I commute, I do what I have to do in my life, and now my outlet is video games. And putting it that way, it makes total sense. Some people, the outlet is I got to go to the gym. Some people, the outlet is I have to go to my martial arts class. Some people, it's I need to go on a drive, get in my car and, drive up the coast, whatever. Like that's your outlet.
Yeah.
Putting it that way makes total sense. But you're right. There is that stereotypical stigma to it that if you play video games more like too much, you're kind of seen as like an outcast, or that you don't have any friends, or that your friends are people online who you've never really met in person, but you develop that relationship with them. Like, this is my good buddy player XYZ.
Yeah.
And like, is that what you call him? Like, you know him as player XYZ? Like, yeah, but he's my buddy.
That is true.
I tell him everything. Yeah. It's amazing how it's gone that way, because a lot of the older generation sees that as, okay, you're in your mid to late 20s. You should be finding someone to marry. You should be getting ready to buy a home.
Should be, yeah.
Exactly.
All these expectations.
Exactly. And the ironic thing is, especially in your industry, with where you're at, it can be a pretty lucrative career. You can afford to buy a nice home. You could afford to buy a nice car. You can afford the things that your parents might tell you you're supposed to have by a certain point. But just the idea that you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not what used to be seen as a really idealistic career that you're supposed to aim for, because you're not one of those. It's like, you just play video games all day, and then then again, you ask doctors and lawyers about their life, and it's like, I may make a lot of money, but you realize how many hours I work a week and the stress I bring home and the impact it has on my family. It's like, when you put it that way, it makes total sense. But you're right, it's getting over that stigma that an older generation has put on their same. That's what you do all day is play video games.
Exactly. Like a habit becomes a bad habit. Like, sorry, any habit can become a bad habit, right?
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where video games can be a bad habit also, right? If you do spend so much time of your life, right? Everything needs a balance.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how has that affected your personal life? More so, I guess, from the career point of view, and how much time you have to spend doing what it is that you do in the industry. Like, how do you balance that with, trying to, get on with life, finding a relationship, doing other things in life? Do you see where there's an impact that it has on your life with all that?
Yeah. Yes and no, I guess, because it's one of those things where I feel like it could be true for any job, right? I feel like when you're younger, you tend to want to work more because you want to, whatever it is, like find your passion, find your potential, all these P words.
Yeah,
all these words. And I feel like there's like a lot of like, okay, when you do start a new job, right? You probably can relate to this, right? Like, you start any job, you want to show the other, like your coworkers, that you're capable, right? You're good at what you do. You're hired for a reason, right? And a lot of those things can mean working longer hours. And I feel like personally, it's I wouldn't say it's easy for me, but just being able to say work is done now and I'm going to do home, like my personal stuff. And I think I may be tooting my own horn, but one of my, I feel like, strong suits is to have really good control of my schedule.
Yeah. Time management is
big.
Time management
is hard, right? And Google Calendars is a lifesaver. I have to have everything in a calendar because it's so easy now. As I'm getting older, I can't remember things now. Or like, oh, hey, next week I was supposed to meet up with a friend and I totally forgot, right? Like, I need to have these reminders now. And because I've just maybe so used to multitasking all the time that I need this calendar, that like I need to, maybe I'm addicted to doing too many things. I don't know what it is.
I mean, I can kind of see where you're coming from. I have a little bit of that issue too with all these tasks in my checkmark box. But you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to come back to about how this industry and how you got into it and how it affected a relationship that you had in the past. And how did that whole thing happen? Because obviously it impacted you getting a job and where it led you to, and maybe there was expectations of what you guys wanted to go in the future. Like,
so my last serious relationship, it ended up being around 10 years. We were considered like the married couple in a way to all our friends. Like, everyone has met us together. And we lived together. We had like a car together. We had credit cards together. We're basically, married, but not legally, right? And yeah, like I think we got together when we were really young. The you know I always think about it, right? It's like when you meet someone when you're really young, and thinking about who you are now, you're a completely different person, right? It's like your priorities are completely different when, let's say, you're 20. Obviously, when you're that young and you're getting into a relationship at that time, not saying for all relationships, right? It's just what happened for us, that maybe we like jumped in way too early. There's a lot of things that could be that when at the end of that relationship, I was very obsessed with figuring out why the relationship didn't work, right? Like, oh, is it because I work too much? Oh, is it because family expectations, or it could be anything, right? But naturally, it ended where it was very sad, right? It's like a decade of my life, right? I as a part of me, my good friend Paul, Paul,
Mm-hmm.
he always laughs at me. It's just like the way I go through something hard is I get very, what's that word? Self-deprecative, where I'll just like make fun of myself or just like make really bad jokes.
Right.
Like I'm gonna be the butt of the joke because that's just how I, go through things. And there's always this thing where it's like, oh, whatever happened, it was because of I didn't do this or I did this or whatever it was. But when that relationship ended, I basically was like, you know what? Screw the Bay Area. I'm done with this. At that time, actually, I was at my other gaming job company, and they had a huge layoff. It was like about 60% of the company, I think. It was pretty bad, and they were still trying to keep the same production with only 40% people on the workforce. So like I was actually part of that, the ones that didn't get laid off, and I felt this huge survivor's guilt of just feeling like, oh, all my friends got laid off. Like, why did I deserve to? Like, how did I even get here? And I still had to cover for everyone who got laid off, and it was just very stressful at that time. And that was also at the end of that relationship, where that summer, I remember I was just like, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna leave the Bay. I'm gonna move out of my place. I'm gonna get rid of my car, completely start from scratch, and left the Bay for like a good few months to go home, spend some quality time with family. And a lot of that was just like very reflective of like who I want to be as a person, like what happened. Obviously there's a lot of self-blame when you're the one who didn't decide, like for the breakup, right? Like you feel very victimized. You're just like a lot of emotions that come up of like, was I not enough?
I mean, it's one of those things where you can't beat yourself up too much about it. You just got to say part of it is we all grow and we learn different things.
Yeah.
And we had talked about earlier about how, especially with today's modern age, different from our parents and especially our grandparents and beyond that we see that we could do a lot more than just do what everybody else has done, which is you get married at 20s, you start a family, and then that's pretty much your life until the kids grow up, and then you're retired, and then you travel the world or whatever it is on a cruise when you're 70 or whatnot. They were like, no, we can do a lot more nowadays. We can have long careers. We can postpone children until we're in our 30s or 40s for some people. We can, we don't have to just jump into it the way our parents kind of nudge us like, hey, you're getting older. You're supposed to be here at this point in your life.
You're supposed to be here, yeah.
You're supposed to, who's going to take care of you when you get old, or who's going to, what am I going to do now that you're older? I need a grandchild to play with. It's or something like that. Yeah. All these expectations that we used to have that we're sort of thankful we don't have as much anymore. But on the other side, it's that balance of how do we take advantage of what life has to give us now with, what does that look like for us in our personal life? So it's interesting that you brought that up, because I think it's a big thing. It's so many people our age group and younger, probably from 18 now till, up to us who are getting closer to our 40s now, that we still struggle to figure out how to balance, you know, work and career with what I'm supposed to do. And then are we going to create a new what we're supposed to do because we're postponing things that our parents did earlier on?
Yeah.
I always tell people all the time, it's just like buying a house around here. It's like back in the day, you could buy a house around here and one person income could make it happen. You guys could have a great life together. You have a great family and all that good stuff. Now it takes two people to afford that home now. Yeah. And the way that homes flip around here, they're just more commodities now. It's another thing you buy just to make money, as opposed to this is what I'm going to buy so I can live here 30, 40 years.
Everything is a business, if you think about it.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. And it makes you realize, okay, well, if that's the way the world is working now, how do I go with that? Do I change my mindset? Do I change my outlook on life? Do I change my thought process on where I'm going at? Is where I'm going at now okay because it's not what my parents said I should be at, but different pace, new world now.
So it's funny that you bring that up because one of my buddies, I think couple and two other couples bought a house together in the Bay, and it's just like they all live in the same house, and it's like part of, and it's very common, this story. I feel like just a lot of people can't afford a home. I mean, there are some people who can afford
there's plenty of people around here who can just drop the money like it was nobody's business
but
here.
There are others who like need the extra people to join in, right? And it's interesting because I feel like the Bay Area now is so, I mean, I was here with roommates and just like so used to living with other people that now people are also buying homes with roommates and stuff. It's like a thing, and it's like a very common thing.
It's kind of the way to make it happen now. It's like, well, if we all want to own something, let's pull our money together, buy it. I mean, good luck figuring that out when someone just decides they don't want to be in it anymore. I mean, that's going to be a nightmare.
That's another thing.
That's
exactly. Yeah.
That's going to be a pain to deal with. But, you know, again, life lesson that I think a lot of people in our age group are learning about how to balance that and what sacrifices, if you'll call it, you have to make, and what things are more accepting now that wasn't accepting to our parents' generation. So, you know, good advice for a lot of people out there who are kind of confused about that. Getting back to what you were talking about in the Sims video game, I wanted to ask you about these video game conferences, these tournaments that are happening, where esports. Is that what it is? It's called esports. It's called
esports.
Okay. Yeah. Like I was watching something the other night on Netflix about that, and I had no clue that. I mean, I knew that these tournaments existed, but I thought it was like Street Fighter back in the day. You know, you would get together, and this person would beat that person, that would be the champion. It's evolved to this big tournament thing now, where you have multiple players from across different countries who get together on a team to play. I don't even know what League of Legends. I don't even know what that game is, but they're playing this game, and they're in an arena with like 30,000 people who are watching them play this video game on a screen. I mean, it's so crazy that that's actually a thing. You know, I could see going and seeing a live sporting event. Like you go see a Warrior game, you go see a Niners game, but to go and to watch people play video games, it's unbelievable how it's happened. Like, how did that whole thing happen from your point of view and what you saw and what hands you may have in that with the games that you develop?
Probably do not have a hand in that, but I mean, a lot of those esport events tend to lean more of the competitive genres of video games, right? There's like League of Legends. It's like a 5 versus 5. If you think about it, is basically watching any sport game, right? You're just watching players play what they're good at, right? And just esports is just in video games, right? And it's like a lot of these esport events are team-based, right? Like it's crazy that now, you know, in a documentary, that like when they win, like globally, they win millions of dollars, and everyone knows them in the community, and it's insane. I mean, like in terms of like the Sims part of it, we actually recently, or maybe a year or two ago, released a reality show where it's similar to, it's like competitive. There's
a Sims reality show now?
Wow. It's I don't remember what it's called. Don't kill me. But it's funny that just like these video games now is starting to bleed into culture, like, because I feel like when we're younger, video games, as you're saying, it's very compact into like kids, or you do it, at night or whatever, you like to kill time, whatever. But now it's just like, it's very common to hear about video game news, video game celebrities, like these famous people who just make their living now streaming on Twitch, right? They just play video games and have their own community, and they're building their own community through like Discord, right? Like there's servers where like there's a lot of people who I follow on Twitch, and one of my favorites is Fariha, and she's based in Toronto, and she was known to play Overwatch, which is like a first-person shooter game, and she, in a way, built her career that way. But now she's more of what do you call it? It's like she just streams other things, not just video games. She also plays jazz music, so she like randomly would stream jazz piano, and she would sing, and it's like a crazy thing how in general streaming, I think, started off with video games, but now has broadened also into the whatever audience it needs to be. Yeah,
I've seen that. It's amazing that you could. I'm guessing she built up her fame in the video game industry, and because of that fame, now she's doing this jazz thing, and she already has an audience. That's so. I mean, the good thing about it is you can have a passion like playing jazz, and you can put it out there, and you're going to have people who want to listen to it because they trust you as a person, and they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. I'll spend the time to listen to you play whatever jazz instrument you have. That's awesome.
It's like so accessible now, like with anything, right? Like if you want to stream cooking, like,
I mean, yeah. Some of these streaming things I still can't get my head wrapped around. Like
there are some weird ones, though.
People actually spend time doing that all day. I can't even think about it now, but like I've seen some of them were just so crazy. Like, wow, people are spending time watching that. Yeah. But do you, without naming names, do you know people personally within the competitive gaming industry?
No.
No one specifically.
No one specifically. Yeah.
Well, have you heard stories at least about the players who play these games and what their life is like behind the scenes? Is it?
Yeah, I think actually the documentary you watched probably talked about it. Like there was actually a lot of training, right? Like
training to play a video game,
because you're playing like teamwork, right? It's weirdly, well, it's very similar to any sport where you have to practice, you have to have good communication skills. A lot of it, it's pretty funny that it's very similar, where you have to put in the hours, and then when it's time to perform or play for real, like you're doing your best, you're playing your best, right, against the other whatever their best is, right? So it's like the metaphor is exactly the same, right? There's just like a lot of hours you have to put into it. I know, like currently, from what I've noticed, is there's a lot of Korean players that now are in Western teams now. Like I know Overwatch, for example, they have a lot of American teams that have a lot of Korean players because maybe
I've seen
stereotype that. Probably where like Korean players are just very good at. They are also very good at video games.
Yes.
So. Yeah, a lot of them just like are amazing. Like it's crazy to watch like you as a normal person playing video games versus what like a professional video game player is like.
Do you kind of see that as being unhealthy, or is that subjective that you're playing a video game all day?
I think that's subjective.
Okay.
Right? Like I think it's, if you love cooking, you would do cook, like you would cook all the time, right? Like if you like singing, it's like the same. It's just your skill set is for video games.
I guess more the issue would be maybe not physically unhealthy, but how about social skills? Because and we're kind of seeing this now with this whole work from home thing. Most people I've talked to love it, and they're like, if I don't go back to the office, I'm totally happy. I build my own office in the house. I'll buy a house far away because I can afford it. But there's always that aspect of, are you missing that social aspect of the team building, working together thing? And then some people I talk to are like, yeah, I miss it, but if you give me a choice, I'd rather work from home all day, every day, because I don't want to sit in the commute. I get more time with my family, even though there's another side of that where you're always home. You can get like that cabin fever thing.
Totally.
But in terms of like, if you're just playing a video game all day, most of the time you tend to be solo, correct? Even during training, because
I mean, it would depend on what type of game it is, right? But I think with that, it really depends on the person, right? Like exactly what you said, right? Like if you naturally, outside of video games, do not like community, you wouldn't naturally want to look for a community, right? And I feel like same stigma, like video games is not always a solo thing. Like a lot of games is offline and you play by yourself, but there are a lot of communities outside that are online. Like for example, like Discord. Like I'm playing a mobile game right now where literally all I'm doing is just clicking buttons and playing. And I'm part of a guild where it's like what you said. They're just online players that never met them in real life, but because we have a joint, in a way, like we play this game together, that all we talk about is the game, right? It's because I personally want to have a community to talk about this specific game. And there are obviously other people who just want to play the game. Once they're done, they're done. They don't need anything related to that game, right? So I feel like that applies to anything, right?
I think those people you just talked about, the ones that can play the game, and when the clock says, okay, I'm done, I can set it down, I can go on with the rest of my life. Those are the people I would have a lot more respect for, because they can have that separation. Like, I guess from your point of view, do you see that as harming society in general? That there are some people, and it's getting bigger and bigger, are spending so much time playing video games? Or do you see it more as like you could just substitute video games with working at Charles Schwab all day, every day, or you can substitute it with any sort of career where once you get head over heels into it because you're obsessed with it, you got to win, that it's the same thing as if you fill in the blank with any other career?
Yeah, I feel the latter there. It could be anything, right? We're just, if you think about it, video games is just entertainment, right? Like you could watch a movie and be obsessed with it and like constantly, like maybe you do this. I do this all the time with after I watch a Marvel movie, I would go into a YouTube like spiral of like figuring out all the little like Easter eggs and all these little things.
I've seen that.
Yeah. I think it's just, it's the person, right? Like if they have an obsessive behavior, and naturally it always would lean towards video games, right? Like there are people who do play video games and are able to stop themselves, right? I feel like that's like first like a very harder psychology probably question of like up to the person, right? Like I don't think video games is the culprit there.
I mean, that's definitely a good point to make, because, we don't talk about it, but if let's say you're somebody who goes to college and you get the degree and then you get that good paying job like a lawyer, and you got to put all this time in, like a doctor, where you're doing 8-10 years of school, and then you got your residency before you even have a chance to become your own independent doctor. Like the hours that you spend doing that are taken away from your personal life, your interaction with other people, your social skills. But nobody says anything about that, because those are great careers. You are supposed to, go head over heels into it. And your partner, if you find one, is supposed to understand. But because it's video games, even though the lucrative opportunities are there, and you still have to devote the same amount of time to these video game careers, we sort of see that as, well, that's not the same thing as being a doctor or a lawyer. It's like
a double standard there, right? It's still a really good career. Like I'm able to live in the Bay Area, right? That's like pretty crazy to like think about. Like I think that's a great example, right? Like you dedicate your whole life to do this craft, and why is that seen better than anything else, right? Like
I think it does come down to, we were so used to when the video games came out, it was an entertainment thing for kids, and that was it. But now it's morphed into something else, where a lot of the people who are older don't see it that way. They see it as a kid's game, and you're still playing a kid's game at 35, 40 years old. But it's like, really, actually, if you change that to being a software developer, if I said I worked at Apple and I was developing a new thing with the iPhone, you wouldn't say anything. But because it's a video game that has The Sims or Street Fighter on it, now it's like, you're too old to be dealing with that. I see that point now.
Point. Yeah, exactly.
Man, so good way to see it, because even I had to stop to think about it for a second, like, because I've had that stigma before when I meet people who work in the video game industry. Without asking questions, I might think, okay, you play video games all day and you get paid for it. Lucky you.
Yeah.
What are you doing with your life, kind of a thing. And it's not until I talk to them like I'm talking to you now, and you really realize that it's a job. I have to go in and perfect the craft. I'm getting paid to do so. Yes, it's something that's tailored to a younger audience, but it's something that I can take pride in doing. I have to have skills to make it happen. I have to be good with the computers. I have to be good with conferencing. Everything I do behind the scenes is no different than somebody who works at Google or Facebook or YouTube, but we don't say anything about them because we don't have the same stigma on there.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to put it there. So I guess the bigger question would be is, from your point of view, is there a responsibility level there that you think needs to happen that is not happening within the industry? Or is it more pretty much we do what we do, and if somebody decides to go off the rails with it, it's like, what do you want us to say?
That's, yeah, I think that's the question for any company right now, right? Like, I feel like right now we're always talking about inclusion, diversity, and equity, right? Like we're also doing that in The Sims, where it's like, how do we be more inclusive, not just the features that we make for our players, but also in the company in itself and on the team. It's like, how do we focus on these things and also be upfront with these topics, right? There are people who, like, for example, trans rights has been, blasted all over the news now, and it's not just been happening this year, right? It's been happening for decades, right? And now, like, because it ended up talking about pronouns now, like now a lot of, tech companies are adding pronouns, are required to have pronouns. And now, like, you realize a lot of people who you work with, their values are important as well, right? Like, it's not just, oh, I'm reading this on the news. Like, I'm actually working with people who actually really care about these things, and I need to care about it as well, right? And it's also in terms of, for our players, like, because we have so many players, we have like 300 million, whatever number it is. I feel like we have a social responsibility, right, to really cater all these features that we create, all the content that we create that allow the younger generation to express themselves how they want to be, how they want to express themselves, right? So it's like a harder conversation there, right? But it's always a thing where we need to be reassessing all the time, like, talking about like hard stuff, like being uncomfortable all the time and being okay with making the mistake, like saying the wrong things at work, or saying, being upfront, being like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, I said this, to hurt you. It wasn't, my intention, but I'm learning from this, right? I think it's the mentality more so than, what you're reading on the news. So.
Yeah, it's funny. That's such a divisive topic there, because there's hardliners on both sides, and when you take a step back, you can understand how both sides get to where they come from. The all-inclusive side of it, and the side of it that's more traditional as to what do we teach kids. And I've seen examples on both sides where they take it to the extreme, and you're not doing anybody any favors. And we're all learning as probably a species as we age. There are different things that come up that we're not used to, and we have to learn how to adjust. And as long as everybody knows that we're all well-intentioned, there shouldn't be a problem. If I say something that is offensive to you and I literally didn't know it, and you say, hey, I just want to talk to you really fast. You said this, and just let you know, I don't appreciate it, and here's why. Dude, sorry, I did not know. Now I know. Never happen again.
Exactly.
And we move on from there, as opposed to I say something that you take the wrong way, and automatically you're out to get me. You're out to let me hang out in the dry. It's like, dude, I didn't even know what I actually said, because from where I grew up, it might have been different, and that's normal for me.
Yeah.
See that a lot with different cultures, where one thing is a norm somewhere else, and that's just what you're used to. You come to another culture, that same behavior is like big no-no, and it's like, I had no clue, because that was just what I grew up with. That's what I was around. That was what I was exposed to.
It's funny you brought that up, because part of some of the research I was doing, I was making an icon for The Sims, where it had to be I was like, oh, it's a like, obviously thumbs up. But through research, I realized in other cultures, the thumbs up is very offensive. So it's like, oh, okay, now we can't use this because, so these are the things that like always happens.
That's a crazy conversation. A simple thumbs up is seen somewhere as like
completely offensive. Yeah.
And then exactly. So then it becomes, how much do you give for that? It's like, do you say, well, it's offensive to one group, so we can't do it at all? Or is it, this is for the majority of our players okay, and maybe we can put a disclaimer saying this is what it's about, and hopefully people understand. How do you deal with that? And a lot of it does come down to open conversations, being able to speak to somebody, be like, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's why I think the way I think. I understand from your point of view it may be different. Let's have a conversation about it. At the end of the day, we may not agree, but at least I understand where you're coming from, you understand where I'm coming from, and that's the basis for figuring out the way things used to be. And now it's become you're either on the left, you're either on the right, you're either red, you're either blue, you're either this or that, and it's a lot of problems.
Binary. Yeah.
That's why I like sitting down and having these kind of conversations, because we can just have an open, honest conversation with whoever I sit down with. There's no hard feelings. Anything that gets misinterpreted, we handle it there, which is mostly what people, they're not going to say it, but most people in this world be like, dude, that's the way it should be. It should be, we can just all talk to each other and understand where the other person's coming from, because most people in this world are genuinely good and have no ill will intentions. Just sometimes we grow up with a certain mindset, don't realize that it's interpreted differently. We hash it out and we work together with it. But now it's become the more on one side you are, the more attention you get, the more money you can get. That's the scary part with it.
Social media also doesn't help with that as well. It's just so easy to fall into these spirals in a way of just like figuring out like what is right, what is wrong, right? Like there's like a new term now where people on TikTok are being like crime investigators, where they're like posting their opinions on. How do you feel about that?
That is just so dangerous, because it's become like, all these, it started out with that podcast, the one with Anand Saeed. I forgot what it was. It was a really popular one.
True Crime? No, that's a show.
I forgot what it was called. It's a very popular one. I can't think of the name now.
I know what you're talking about.
But like once that thing came out and this investigative reporter goes out and figures out there's more to the scene than what meets the eyes, from what their point of view is, everybody says, oh, geez, I'm going to go out and try to solve that other crime that we thought this person was innocent. I'm going to go out and do all that. Very well intentioned. And there are some cases where it's like, new evidence came up that nobody knew about. We should look at that. But then some people take it to the extreme, not realizing that behind the scenes, even though this is what may be played on the public, here's what really happened behind the scenes that you don't know about. So everything, there's a reason why it went down a certain way. It's not all conspiracy theory. These are the things that never make it on the news that affect the decision in real life. So a lot of people, you definitely appreciate the awareness about being observant about what may have happened out there and reported to the authorities. But there's a certain point where you have to be able to trust the system and say, here's what I know, and then let the system handle it, because they have the resources. They can have the conversations that they cannot have with you because of privacy laws, integrity of investigations, what the DAs do and don't need. So there's definitely a lot going on there. And I think that does come back down to a mistrust of the system that's been built up for a while, that really, there were some people that abused it, like everything else, it seems. It's almost like a human nature thing. You give any one group too much power, there's going to be people who are going to misuse it. And it screws it up for everybody else who was doing the right thing. All it takes is that one person to screw up because they took advantage of their position, power, whatever it is, and now everybody else associates that person with that, or that group with that incident. Oh, you're all that because that one person did it, or because those few people did it. And it's like, that's like 0.1% of the population, and we're going to paint the big brush. I see that a lot more with the younger generation's point of view compared to the older generation, which is like, I see both sides, and they have a much bigger mindset. I just personally think it comes down to the fact when we're 20, and I've known this from my personal thing, you think you're right. You think you know how the world works. You think what your parents tell you. It's like, Dad, that was that worked for you, but this is me, and you don't know me. I know me, and I know the right answer. And then you get old and you realize, actually, my dad was right. I didn't know what I was talking about back then, or I really couldn't see the whole picture, because mentally, our brains don't fully develop till we're in our mid to late 20s. So there's just no way we can process all those things and how we view the world at such a young age until we get older. Our minds develop and we get more life experience. We see the bigger picture, and it's like, it's not as black and white as I thought it was back then. It actually has a lot of gray area. And one decision that I make here that I think is right is going to affect all these other people. And then where's the morality in that?
Yeah.
Climate change has been a big, huge one. It's like, okay, human-induced climate change is the planet's warming up, and, we need to stop using fossil fuels. And I get all that point there. But it's if you think about the bigger picture. Like, we used to burn wood all the time before we had fossil fuels. You imagine all the pollution that caused. You've seen all the wildfires we've had over here that were far away, and look at all that smoke that was hanging around here.
Yeah.
We're not burning wood anymore. We went to burn gasoline, which was a better option, if you want to call it that, in terms of pollution. And now we're going to electricity. But in going to electricity, we have these batteries for like Teslas. What do we do with that? We haven't figured that out yet. And you think you're going to solve the problem by fixing one industry, and it's like, okay, now here's the bigger picture. Yeah. It's one of those things that I wish that more people that were steadfast in their opinion just took a step back, see the whole picture. Whether you change your mind or not, at least you have a better idea of how the world works. Yeah. Your decision here is going to affect all those people there too. If Facebook, for example, says, okay, we're going to do the right moral thing. We're going to get rid of all this stuff that people say that we're not supposed to have on our platform. Okay, if they did that, which would be thumbs up to them. What people may not realize is people are going to lose their jobs who work at Facebook. They're going to say, we don't have the money anymore, so you're all out of a job. Your salaries are cut down.
Do you remember when, was it like a few weeks ago, when all Facebook products went down for a day? And then there was like an article that came out about,
do you have insight on that? You know what really happened? Because I don't.
I don't know what happened. I don't know. But just like the business side of things, of like how many other people who depend on Facebook products for their business, how much money that was lost. And then you didn't realize, like, there are a lot of people's like life, really, their small business is because of Facebook's, like, Instagram, right? There's so many like small businesses on Instagram, like with Facebook, and it's just like crazy. Have one day, it was only not even a full day, it was like I think 8 hours or something, and that, I don't remember that specific number, but it was just like crazy to me that I didn't realize, like, not just all like the scrolling stuff and the ad stuff, but like other people rely on their products.
It was funny you mentioned it that day. I remember I went on early in the day and it wasn't loading. I'm like, whatever. And I didn't think about it
like,
until you go on like the news, turn the TV, and it's like Facebook went down. It's this big conspiracy. I'm like, really? I just waited 8 hours and it came back. No big deal. I go on with the rest of my life. But so many people, you're right, dependent upon it. That's the thing, is like, if you're Facebook, what do? You have the moral issues and you're trying to do the best you can, or maybe you're not doing enough. That's subjective. Then you have the business side, and then you have the people whose lives are intertwined with all that. What do? I don't have the answer. I don't think anybody can really say it's either A or B, because you can make a case for both sides there. If I'm a Facebook employee and they say, guess what, your job's gone because we have to do all this stuff here and we're losing revenue because of it. Now I can't pay my mortgage. Now my family is out on the street. It's such a bigger issue that cannot be solved just by one side saying A or B. It's just getting everybody together and saying
everything is in layers.
This is how it works. Like, how do we handle it? Maybe we can all come together and Zuckerberg can say, you know what, we're gonna have to make some hard choices, but we got to do what's right. And maybe the real answer is we have no clue how to fix this, because
I honestly feel like it's that, right? It's just like so ingrained into society.
It's become such a bigger beast that it's almost like those banks in 2008. They were too big to fail, because if they failed, everybody would have lost so much.
Exactly.
People would have ended their lives because of it. It was so bad. But the other side was like, why do they get a bailout when I can't pay my mortgage? Give me a bailout. And you understand, why should the big banks get bailed out and you kind of get kicked to the side? I see that point as well. But you're right. It's just such a bigger thing that, and I think if you were to ask Zuckerberg, he would try to tell you, I had no clue this was going to become what it became. We're all trying to figure it out, and it's metastasized into this big web of money and influence. And
it's what it is.
what are you going to do with it? Yeah.
It's suddenly became political, and once it gets there, it's just a beast in itself.
But because it became what it became, like Google and YouTube, that's what was able to get all this money here. That's why people can earn these $200,000 salary jobs working at these tech or more. It's crazy. Yeah. More working at a tech giant, working in front of a computer all day. That's where that money comes from.
Yeah.
And that's probably why the reason why the houses are so expensive over here too, is because they can afford it because they're getting paid lucrative salaries. You know, behind these scenes, you think they're going to be like, I want to cut off the hand that feeds me.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they are. I mean, but it's not a conversation for me to have. I'm just a simple person going through the world, and I can see both sides of the equation. I'm like, hey, you guys got to all sit in the room and figure it out.
You're starting to sound like a TikTok investigator.
Is that me? Is that what they do? Man, maybe that's my second career. Anyway, you know, I try to get off my soapbox with that. You know, I don't take sides in that whole thing. I see both areas of it, and you know, good luck to who can never figure it out, because not a problem I want to tackle. I think Zuckerberg behind the scenes is just like, what am I going to do?
His hair.
Yeah, he's losing enough of it already. Man, this has been a cool conversation. I had no idea the video game industry was as in-depth as it is after talking to you, and just like what you do every day that never would have thought about. Never would have thought about that it's actually like this behind the scenes. It's more tech than it is like, you know, what do you call it? Entertainment. Yeah. It's entertainment at the end of the day, but what you do is more ingrained in tech.
Heavy, yeah. It's crazy because as the future, as you know, as the days progress, technology is going to get better and better. And I don't know if you've seen like the latest, like, you know, PS5, obviously, the games that they make, they're so realistic. A lot of movie directors are starting to direct video games because of the you know, technologies, like the capability of just rendering real life skin, like even water. Like, it's just amazing to me. Like, it's you're right. Like, if you think about it as a kid, you're so used to playing pixelated, you know, Mario
sprites,
right, on the Game Boy. Now it's just like full worlds, real life people that you like kind of, you think they're fake, but then you're like, no, they're real. No, they're fake. Like, it's just like this weird animation that's like there's people who would need to animate these characters. There's people who build these environments. There's like, if you think about it, everything in 1 second of a video game, there's probably hundreds of people creating the lighting, the sky, the voice acting, right? The animation, like even the UI, right? Mm-hmm. And the experience of it, right? It's like crazy how much work it takes to render. So you can imagine games that are, like 40 hours long, and how much time and effort it makes. It's like, it's crazy. It's only going to be faster, I feel like, because technology is going to start picking things up, like rendering things faster, whatever. PlayStation 10 is going to be like, I don't know, virtual. Who knows?
Well, that's one thing I was going to ask you now that you brought it up. Where do you think this whole AI thing is going?
Oh, my God.
What insights do you have?
AI thing is interesting because there's like two different ways to think about it, right? Like, there's a lot of things that are going to be helpful for humans in terms of productivity that might make things more efficient, right? Like, in that level, I think that's great, where you're building code, you're building a bot that helps you like sift through. Like, if I guess in terms of like video games, there are bots, like AI things that are written like for profanity filters. Like, a lot of those, obviously I'm not a coder, I don't know, but like a lot of these things are written to keep, you know, if a player was to enter anything terrible, it would know to block it or, you know, take it out of the game, for example. Like, those are written, those are like things that, you know, in a way safe or guards the game, right? Like, there are other things that are obviously in movies like Terminator, like terrifying, right? Like, when AI ends up taking over the world, like, obviously there's those fears. I don't have inside knowledge at all, but it's just like, obviously it's going to get there, right? Like, even though now, like, I think there's VR, right? Like, do you own any
No.
VR?
You know, the only
headsets?
thing I ever owned about that was Virtual Boy. Remember that?
Oh
The
my
red
God,
thing?
Nintendo one? The
Yeah, I
huge-
had it for like a bit and then this isn't going to do anything. Like that was my VR back in the day. Now
It's
I've
insane.
never tried those PS ones
Yeah,
or the
yeah, yeah.
Oculus, whatever they
Oculus
call
ones,
it.
yeah.
From what I hear, it's like completely like you literally get immersed into whatever it is that you're on there
Yeah.
for. And like,
It's
Wow.
scary. Yeah.
So
It's crazy because now I mean, talking about Facebook again, but they're like trying to build out the VR industry, I feel like, because they're literally buying VR companies left and right and trying to build out, I don't know if you're familiar, like they have this product now called Horizon, where it's basically Facebook but VR, where you get to like get into this world and you're playing, like you can just chat with friends or have meetings, but there's also these worlds where people can build, where you could experience together, and it's like,
wow.
yeah,
I think that goes back to an original point we talked about, which is the innovation you like. Is that too much? Where it's like we're literally gonna be walking around with these headsets, and that's our life.
Do you remember when everyone was wearing Google glasses?
Yeah, that was a thing for
That
like
was a thing,
a year.
right? But there's always this pushback, right? Anything that seems to, when I feel like when society is not ready for or afraid of, they would push back, and it would the product would tank, right? Like I feel like at that time, I remember when Google Glasses came out, like only a lot of the tech people had it. A lot of people who can afford it would have it, right? But everyone else was just like, what is this craziness, right? Like, it's just like a very interesting like thing there. But I do feel like naturally things are, new products are going to be created. Things would eventually get scary and people will hit it and then it would tank again. And then, because if you think about it in the VR sense, now because Oculus, I think Facebook has made it more affordable. So like people in a way can now buy their own headset, but VR, like you said, like I totally forgot what you just said. The Gamer Boy.
Just the whole with the Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it was that technology was there. It was just the public wasn't ready for it.
It's I don't know how that whole thing is gonna look. It's there's a lot of moral issues with that. There's the business side of it. It's like we got to get out ahead of it because if we don't, somebody else will.
I
And
mean, it's like Tesla, right? Like,
well, I mean, Elon wants to put chips in your head now. I mean, I don't know.
who knows?
Who knows? Maybe when we're long gone and dead, 200 years from now, that's gonna be the way it is. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
we don't
everybody's,
We're
or it'd be
probably
like,
gonna come back from the dead
Or,
and
you were
drive these cars.
you remember that movie I, Robot with
Yes.
Will Smith?
Oh my gosh.
And it was so like ridiculous about how that's never gonna happen. And there was that one scene where he's in the tunnel and he's in his Audi, and the car is driving itself, and he's just sitting there like this. You're like, it's
Yeah.
never gonna happen. And yet people are doing it now with Teslas.
Yeah.
Automatic driver, they're sitting in the back seat, and it's like, wow, we're really going down that route, huh?
Yeah.
It's just
I mean, it's crazy if you just think about history, right? Like how planes were created. They're like, people are like, we'll never fly. And then now we have planes. And then now it's like, what's next for us? Like obviously in movies, they're like, what, hover cars, teleportation. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like portals, who knows? But it's just crazy. Like really no one would know until someone thinks about it and
Yeah.
actually creates it, right?
Yeah. Do you see a world where when all these things are created, especially from your insight into the industry, that it's going to be seen as we'll adapt to it, we'll be okay? Or do you think it's like, okay, that's pushing it too much, where I think it's going to really, we're just not going to talk one-on-one anymore. Every interaction is going to be me through you, but we're wearing these headsets.
Yeah. It possibly could be, right? Like, have you seen the movie, what's originally a book to Ready Player One?
I never saw that. I
Okay.
I never watched it.
In a way is very similar to exactly what you're saying, right? Like, I don't know how crazy in the future it is, but like everyone is just hooked into this virtual. If it was also a thing about like, if you can afford to be in this virtual world, you can be in the virtual world forever, right? Versus people who cannot afford it, they're in the real world, but the real world is completely torn down. It's like, it obviously it touches on like classism of like, and it's like crazy, right? It could go anywhere. And I feel like a lot of movies have touched on this very topic, and a lot of them, like Black Mirror. Do you remember that?
No.
There's like it's a Netflix show where it's Twilight Zone remake in a way, where every episode did something about twisted about reality, but it's creepily relatable and could probably happen. Yeah.
It's just, if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. But I probably don't want to be around when it becomes mainstream. It's like the most ridiculous things that you could see in TV and movies, like that'll never happen. The fact that it's even that close now is really, yeah. What's next? The robots are going to take over, or the aliens will come down and then they'll erase everything. Yeah, the way this world is going, I just beyond that. Really quickly, we were talking about some of the issues that we see where people take advantage of, like video games, Facebook, and whatnot. One thing we didn't talk about there that I think people should know is that it's kind of a reflection of how deep in the black some people can get out there. There's a lot of sick things out there in the world,
yeah.
And whether it's a video game or Facebook or whatever, they may give platforms for this, but you're never going to get eliminated. People are still going to do some of the most crazy, ridiculous, disgusting, sick things out there that you never would even know about. There was who was it? There was somebody. I was watching this podcast by Patrick Bet-David. He was talking to somebody who used to work at Facebook in the integrity department. He would explain things. His job was to go through and try to filter out all this stuff that's on Facebook. And he's like, the things that people had put on there, like you would never imagine, and then they were actually there. And it's horrible to think that that's actually there. On the other side of it, most of us don't see it because it doesn't show up in our feed. No. It doesn't pop up on our Instagram or whatever. It's like you really got to know what you're looking for to go find things like that. And if you erase it, they're going to go find another outlet.
Yeah.
And
there's like, internet's pretty dark.
It can. It's just makes you wonder if you ever had kids. Like, how much do you want them to even have a phone? Like, how much do you want them to really like? That's a whole debate that the parents have now. When's too early to have a phone? I think it should be no more than 13 years old at the earliest. But some people are like 7 years old. Here you go.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy to think about what can happen that way.
I mean, it's crazy because it's like now you have iPads that can have a SIM card in it, right? Like it's like if you were to give a kid an iPad and they're just using it to watch their shows, but if you're not monitoring them,
it,
they can really go and look at anything they want, right? Like it's interesting because it's like now a lot of products, if you don't have kids, a lot of products have child accounts, right? And this is like hopefully to protect the kids, right? But like generally, I feel like kids, like my nephews and nieces now, they're super young, but they're so smart. They like know how to work phone, like iPhones, and just like my sister would ask them like, oh, I don't know how to do something on the iPhone. They're just like I don't know, under 10 or something, and they're just so adept with anything now that they're given to them.
We think of it as crazy now, but then when we were kids and computers were a thing, we could figure it out in a heartbeat. And the parents were like, whatever.
They're like, how do you type on this keyboard? You're like, what do you mean?
Yeah, you just do this, and it's totally fine. And now we're seeing the other side of it, where these kids are doing things on the phones, the computers that I still can't figure out.
Have you seen this trend on TikTok where I talk about TikTok a lot? Sorry, but there's like a trend of like how
You're addicted to TikTok.
I'm a little
behind the scenes,
where they how do you tell differentiate a millennial versus like Gen Z? Is like you ask them, pretend you're talking on the phone. Have you seen that one?
No.
So it's like I'm gonna ask you, pretend you're talking on the phone.
Okay.
Like actually with your
hands. So I would just do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now, I also did this, and then that's like an old school way, because phones back then used to have a handle.
Mm-hmm.
But when you ask a younger generation now, they do this because they're so used to
that is.
It's like a crazy thing. You're like, okay, yeah, first I'm like getting old, sure, but like now technology has completely changed.
I never would have thought of it. It makes total sense. We
Yeah.
just grew up going
We grew
like
up
this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now they're just like this because they're holding smartphones.
so simple, and I never would have thought about it. Never would have thought about that. That's the new way when you pretend to call somebody. It's this as opposed to
this. Yeah.
wow. That whole TikTok thing. You know, I put a few clips on there just to put them on there, but that whole world is a whole. I mean, people just set up these crazy stunts, and
Oh yeah.
I mean, some of them are fun and cool to look at. Some of them are like, wow, this whole thing went viral.
It's like instant, like completely instant gratification, right? They like, what is it, like 15 seconds or something? And then it's like, how do you grab someone's attention that way? And it's like insane.
Do you see that as a problem in the world? Instant gratification with these things?
Obviously, like with anything, it's just like a very interesting thing for just any. I feel like anything, like back to like the casino thing, right? Like the flashy lights, the like why people go to like, I don't know, Vegas to play the slot machines, right? It's just like the instant like, oh, I'm gonna win something. Oh, the flashy lights makes me excited. It could be. I think it's all. It's in all of society.
Well,
like the wanting instant gratification.
I'm hoping that I'm doing my part to kind of buck that trend, because this is considered long form interview podcasting, whatever you want to call it there. And I think it's something that we're missing. Like, when's the last time you actually sat down with somebody for, what are we at, an hour and a half now, and you had a conversation?
Yeah.
Has it been a while?
I mean, on the phone.
Okay.
But never in person, yeah.
See, that even then, you talk to some new kids now, and it's like
They
30
can't even-
seconds, they're done. Their
they can't
attention's
even
gone.
Look at you at the like eye to eye. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's something that I think is going to be a trend to help get us back. I don't want to say get us back on track, but kind of sort of, you know, move the needle more closer to where we can all understand. Where if we get used to this position where we can sit down and just have a conversation, distraction free, except for the lights, without having to worry about offending somebody, without having to worry about pressing somebody's buttons. You'd be amazed how much you can learn about somebody, how much that can advance us as a whole. And if we did more of that, where like this whole time we're not on our phones going through the whole scroll thing, it's just like figure out who people are.
Yeah.
We're losing a lot of that.
I agree.
So I think this would be great when, you know, who knows how many people are going to see this video here. Hopefully eventually somebody will, and just to be able to sit down, play in the background, and listen to two people talk about video games, relationships, life. Exactly. You really realize how much all that plays a part into your everyday life. You don't get it if all you see is the Instagram hit, the TikTok hit, or the viral
surface level. Yeah.
Exactly.
You got to get into the deep stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds cliche, but really that's how you grow as a person, to see a bigger side of things.
Yeah. It's like crazy, because it's like you have to learn to be empathetic to others, right?
Yep.
Like, and through that you learn to be more empathetic to yourself, right? And it's like you need to have these hard conversations.
It's a journey that never ends. Like, I'm never gonna, you know, you're never gonna cross that finish line. But you know, every time I sit down with somebody, I learn something new that helps me out. Like, I never thought about the world that way. I never saw that person's point of view. I never would have thought that there was a bigger side to that industry than what you were telling me. You know, I would never understand. And if I just make a decision based upon what my instincts are and the little bit of information I have, I miss so much about what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. It's true. Like, because of the pandemic, I feel like we had to relearn how to learn.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like we're still in the pandemic, and all these little things we're still trying. Even it's been 2 years now, and it's like we're still learning how to be a person. Even more, right? Like it's like crazy how, like it's funny because after the or during the pandemic, a few months into it, I like bumped into a coworker on the street and just like didn't know how to talk to people, like right, just like, oh
wow,
hi, cool, like good to see you. You're getting groceries, cool. Just like this weird, because you're just suddenly just thrown into this completely new way of talking to people that you're just so used to being on Zoom or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That when you do see someone that now a lot of my coworkers, I've only met them, some of them through Zoom. I've never seen them in real life. And it's like a crazy thing to think about.
The world we live in, man. Alister Lee, man, it's been an hour and a half. This has been awesome. Time
great.
flies when you're
Thanks
having a
for
good
having me.
conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if anybody wanted to reach out to you or ask questions about maybe not specifically where you work, but how you get your foot in the industry, what to
Yeah.
expect, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can find me on Instagram. It's at Imagine Felix.
Imagine Felix, spelled out just as it sounds.
Yeah, sounds it sounds.
I'll link it in the thing in the bottom
and
here.
Yeah, I also mentor designers. So if you are a designer wanting to get into the game industry, you could feel free to talk to me.
That's
Also.
excellent.
But yeah.
Perfect. All right, I'll put it out there. And thank you for the conversation, man. This was awesome. If anybody out there, if you like the video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up so I can help get the information out there to YouTube. How YouTube works is the more people like it, the more they're going to push it out there to the masses. And more of these type of long conversations are important, I think. And you'd be surprised how many people would actually be willing to sit down and listen to them and spend the time with it, even in the background. Thank you, Alister. This was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah,
All
it's
right.
been-
Absolutely. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.